Where can I find the others?
Based on the title of this video, I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with the fact that there are two Hunter x Hunter adaptations. One came out in 1999 from Nippon Animation, and the show had this grainy, film-like texture, and it was a little bit rough around the edges. But then again, it was directed by Kazuhiro Furuhashi, who was also the mind behind Rurouni Kenshin. The other one came out in 2011 and had cleaner lines and smoother movement, and that's to be expected considering Studio Madhouse was behind it. Obviously, that one ran for a lot longer. But today, in this video, we're not here to see which one is better, because we're going to be dissecting the things that changed between them, and why some versions have the darkest and ugliest moments which just hit differently. So, without wasting any more time, let's begin with every dark difference between the 1999 and 2011 Hunter x Hunter adaptations. Two broadcast slots, two completely different shows. In Japan, this anime had different air times throughout the years, but the most popular time for the 1999 version was a family time slot on Saturdays, with the intention that families would watch it together while they were having dinner. After the 62nd episode, the story continued through original video animations, or OVAs, which were released directly on home video. However, the 2011 show was usually televised on Sunday mornings. After episode 98, the show was moved to a late-night time slot, beginning with episode 99. But it makes you wonder, why did they have such different time slots? And trust me, there is a reason. You see, the Saturday time slot was when children could watch the anime with their parents, and what this did was allow the parents to discuss the show with their kids during dinner. This is one of the reasons this period is considered golden time for television in Japan. Discussions among families could be important because sometimes there were scenes that were a little too intense or graphic. As far as the early episodes of the 2011 version are concerned, the violence was much more subdued. One possible reason for this more subdued presentation was that on Sunday mornings, most children were waking up and parents generally preferred gentler shows. Seeing something too graphic, like severed body parts without adult supervision, could be uncomfortable for parents, which might have influenced both the time slot and the content. The Hunter Exam Journey, 5 episodes versus 3. If you've watched both versions, you know that Gon, along with Kurapika and Leorio, travels towards the location of the Hunter exam on the captain's ship. But what happens in the 1999 version is that journey is stretched across additional episodes, and there's even a filler episode where Gon meets Leorio. This meeting happens at the port instead of on the ship. These filler episodes don't add anything major to the main story arc, and they mostly revolved around Gon and his connection with animals, and Leorio's talent at arm wrestling. But we do get to see the trio bonding at sea after going through a rough night. After they arrive at Doll Harbor, Leorio initially gets on the bus before joining Kurapika and Gon after he realizes that the bus is going in circles. In both versions, the trio has to pass the trivia test, and both versions show what happens after. Some things were a bit similar, like the mountain guide scene, as well as the initial confusion over which place is the actual entrance to the exam, but one thing we know for sure is that in the 2011 version, we get to the actual exam in 3 episodes, which is quite quick compared with the 1999 version, where the first stage begins in episode 6. Kite's introduction, a quiet, devastating scene, the 2011 version delayed. In the very first episode of the 1999 anime, we see a younger Gon in danger from a large predator, an adult fox bear. He's about to be killed by this predator when a mysterious man comes out of nowhere, uses his katana, and takes out the terrifying creature. This mysterious man is Kite, who's roaming around Whale Island in search of his mentor, who turns out to be Gon's father. What's more interesting is that this scene is taken from the very first chapter of the Hunter x Hunter manga, and you could say it's very, very faithful. But this exact scene isn't present at the beginning of the 2011 version. It's instead shown as a flashback during episode 76, during the Chimera Ant arc. Now, this early introduction in the 1999 version mattered because that's where viewers get to see this gentle, mentor-like human moment. This is the guy who saved Gon and even slapped him out of frustration because it was common knowledge to avoid fox bears, as they're very dangerous when they're with their cubs. If you remove this scene from the beginning, what's left is a darker story arc that misses out on his whole "a stranger who can also care" persona, because this is a moment you'll never get to experience in quite the same way. The Zoldyck Estate. Same story, very different atmosphere. When it comes to the Zoldyck Estate story, both versions are kind of similar, yet not so similar at the same time, because we see Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio visiting the Zoldyck family estate to find Killua. In both adaptations, they face the testing gate, the formidable Zoldyck security, and the gradual discovery of just how intimidating Killua's home is. What actually makes the 1999 and 2011 versions so different is the visuals and atmosphere of the same story. The former was produced using traditional cell animation, which used heavier shadows, a darker color palette, and a more analog-looking image. This really gave the estate a gloomier and more foreboding atmosphere. But when it came to the latter, the 2011 adaptation was digitally produced by Madhouse. This show had a much cleaner composition, the lighting was brighter, and the image quality was sharper. Obviously, these changes provide amazing visuals and clarity in the background details, but some viewers have also pointed out, and I kind of agree with them, that this slightly reduces the oppressive mood created by the previous adaptation. Kurapika versus Uvogin. The same fight, handled completely differently. Everybody who watched this battle between Uvogin and Kurapika knows it was one of the best fights in the series, and that's how it's still remembered. Most violent members of the Phantom Troupe, the group responsible for the brutal killing of Kurapika's clan, which is why Kurapika was hell-bent on revenge. Most of you probably remember Kurapika's Scarlet Eyes ability and how, when he gets angry, his eyes turn a bright shade of red. When his eyes become scarlet, Kurapika changes from a conjurer into a specialist and can activate Emperor Time, which allows him to use all Nen categories at full efficiency. What we see in the 1999 version is that their fight builds up slowly and the atmosphere is heavy with tension. That tension sits with you until they collide, which is why fans get this raw, tense feeling every time they watch it. But then comes the 2011 version with episode 47, where we do see his eyes change to red when he becomes enraged. In terms of visuals, this one's preferred animation-wise because the movements are sharper and the impact of each attack is much clearer. All of this makes the fight taking place on the outskirts of Yorknu exciting to watch. In the end, Uvogin is killed in this fight, but honestly, watching both these fights together and simultaneously makes this whole thing way more interesting. Kurapika's flashback to the Kurta clan massacre, restraint versus weight. It's obvious that Kurapika's trauma is what led him to his quest for vengeance, and we see this in both the 1999 and 2011 adaptations. But we have different directors for these adaptations, so how they frame the flashbacks and the weight of the tragedy is also different according to their directorial preferences. But before we go into the distinctions, it's important that we know what actually happened during the massacre and why I feel that Uvogin should have gone through even more hell from Kurapika. The Kurta clan massacre occurred several years before the 287th Hunter exam, and the Phantom Troupe attacked because they wanted to get their hands on the clan's valuable Scarlet Eyes. In order to do that, the bandits brutally murdered 128 people. Family members were forced to face one another while they were stabbed multiple times, and their heads were cut off while they were still alive. The eyes were gouged out of the Kurta clan members who possessed Scarlet Eyes, which honestly is tough to say, let alone imagine. It was absolutely brutal. The 1999 version creates a dreadful atmosphere, with the director using quiet, lingering shots to emphasize the raw horror of the brutal massacre. You get to spend more time in the aftermath, and of course, there's graphic loss. All of this builds a profound sense of misery that ends up setting a dark, macabre tone. However, the 2011 version chooses artistic restraint and different pacing. Instead of focusing on graphic depictions of the massacre, because that killing was more like a genocide, it focuses on contrasting colors. This ends up giving viewers an emotional gut punch because you understand the scale of the slaughter without overshadowing the psychological trauma that Kurapika went through. The Phantom Troupe's assault during Krollo's Requiem. When the Phantom Troupe coordinated a massive assault during the York New City auction, it was unique yet chaotic, with violence and brutal massacres, and it needs a section of its own. In the 1999 adaptation, there's much more focus on the overwhelming scale of the tragedy as it treats the spreading chaos like a descent into urban madness. The 2011 version is more of a clinical execution of the operation. It's as if the members are moving like pieces in a well-oiled machine and everything is moving exactly as it should if this were a chess match. However, when it comes to pacing, the 1999 version is a bit slower, so the tension can simmer. It feels like the Phantom Troupe is hunting its prey by making them wait for a very long time and testing their patience. In the 2011 version, however, where the pacing is faster and relentless, this group of villains feels more like an elite antagonistic force with the power to smash through obstacles in seconds. If we look at them side by side, it's the same organization, the same night, and of course the same assault. But one version makes you feel like you're being hunted and can't see it coming, while the newer version makes you invested in what's going to happen next. Nevertheless, it's not the same kind of unsettling. Pakunoda's death scene, one of the story's most devastating moments, twice. Yes, it's very true that Pakunoda's death scene was one of the most emotionally devastating moments in the entire York New City arc. When she was bound by Kurapika's judgment chain, which didn't allow her to reveal information about him, she chose to sacrifice her light. She fired memory bombs at 6 of the Phantom Troupe members, and by doing this, she transferred her memories and feelings to them, after which she died as the chain pierced her heart. In the 1999 version, this scene heavily leaned into a suffocating dark atmosphere where most of the focus was on the grim reality of her death. The 2011 adaptation focused on the emotional liberty she gained from the choice she made and the warmth she shared with the troupe members who would become like her family. As far as the score for this scene is concerned, the 1999 version used melancholic and deeply somber tones, which gave viewers a haunting and heavy impression that made the tragedy feel immediate and permanent. Then we've got the 2011 version, which uses a grand orchestral score. It becomes dramatic at times and makes the scene feel like an epic, with a crescendo that tugs at viewers' hearts and definitely causes some tears. Where the 1999 version simply stops, and why that's its own kind of darkness. The sad fact about the 1999 version is that it simply stopped after finishing Greed Island. I'm serious, that version never even got to the Chimera Ant arc, the Election arc, or any of the arcs that the manga published after that point. The original TV series ended after 62 episodes, but the story continued through 3 OVA series, bringing the total to 92 episodes and completing the Greed Island arc. All of this means that people who watched the 1999 adaptation never got to see the story's most famous and disturbing material, like the body horror and psychological horror that came with the Chimera Ant arc. All of that was simply absent, and it's kind of bittersweet. Why's that? Well, newcomers who come to watch this series after reading the manga won't have a 1999 anime counterpart to compare it with when it comes to events like Kite's death or Neferpitu's cruelty, because they simply don't exist in that adaptation. Filler content. What 1999 added that 2011 mostly cut. There was something unique about the 1999 adaptation. It had a lot more filler and anime original content, which is content created specifically for the anime that you might not find in the manga. The 2011 version goes in the opposite direction. It has far less filler and sticks much more closely to the source material, although it's not completely identical to the manga. You see, some of the filler we got to see in the 1999 version focused on building slower, more atmospheric, and sometimes unsettling side material. This was largely absent from the 2011 version because it wanted to keep the plot moving on track. Then again, the filler wasn't essential because it wasn't canon. Nevertheless, older fans remembered a good chunk of these episodes because of the moods they created. So you could say that, in the end, the 2011 version kind of missed out on this whole layer of world building the 1999 adaptation created with its filler content. So what did we actually learn by comparing the two versions of Hunter x Hunter? Well, firstly, neither version is better, and that was never the point of this video. But it does prove that sometimes the same characters from the same manga with the exact same storyline can produce 2 different shows. It totally depends on who's behind the camera and what they decide to focus on. At the end of the day, both versions have earned their respective spots in Hunter x Hunter franchise history, and both deserve a lot more credit than some fans give them. So which version have you rewatched multiple times because you just can't get enough of it? Let us know your answer in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, let us know which differences we missed in your own words. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.